The world of capital knows no compassion. It operates only through the purity of transmitting will. There is a persistent illusion that success is built on a dialogue with the consumer, on attempts to guess their desires or adapt to the shifting landscape of the market. But at the top of the business evolution food chain, this myth crumbles. True power begins where empathy ends, and the dictate of the idea takes over. Those who changed the face of modern civilization acted not as servants of society, but as its architects, imposing a new reality by force. In the early 90s, within the walls of technology laboratories, a new standard of management was forming, one devoid of human sentiment. When a young team of developers suggested conducting market research to learn the opinions of students, teachers, and parents about software, they were met with the icy resistance of their leader. Steve Jobs openly declared his indifference to what others thought. His philosophy was built on a harsh postulate: the crowd does not know what it wants until it is told. This was a despotic, almost primal form of leadership that tolerated no objections. Opponents were suppressed by a simple argument: financial efficiency. If a system generates profit and demonstrates explosive growth, any moral or ethical claims against management methods are nullified. At the core of this phenomenon lies a strict biological law, the signal-to-noise ratio. For most people, reality is a chaotic stream of sounds, emotions, news, and social obligations. But the brain of an industry titan functions as a high-powered filter. Its signal consists of the 3 or 5 critical tasks that must be solved within the next 18 hours of wakefulness. Everything else, family, friends, social networks, hobbies, and empty talk, is classified as noise. This is trash that clutters cognitive channels and slows down the movement toward the goal. Success protocol, according to Jobs, required an 80-to-20 ratio, 80 units of pure signal against 20 units of noise. This meant absolute availability to the system at any time of day. Emails at 2:30 a.m. were not an aberration, but the norm of functioning. However, evolution does not stand still. The modern interpretation of this neurobiological dictatorship is reflected in Elon Musk. In his reality, noise does not exist at all. His cycle is a 100% signal every second, every minute, every hour of his 18-hour workday. Such a level of concentration inevitably leads to social deformation. When the human mind turns into a laser focused on expansion, it loses the ability to interact normally with its environment. What the common person calls life, interacting with loved ones or resting, is for the system merely an interference in achieving the mission. This is the price of singularity. The great geniuses of history have always stood as close as possible to the 100% signal mark, turning their existence into a continuous process of realizing their will. They do not simply ignore criticism or external pressure. They do not hear it. Noise is cut off at the level of neurochemistry, leaving only cold calculation and forward motion. The recognition of one's own inadequacy is the high point of intellectual cynicism, accessible only to a few. In the mass consciousness, the image of a titan capable of carrying the heavens of a corporate empire on their shoulders alone has taken root. This is a dangerous delusion, leading to inevitable structural collapse. True capital is not built on universality. It is erected on the foundation of conscious deficit. The system requires from a leader not omnipotence, but surgical precision in identifying their own voids. every leader is a wall with deep cracks, and the only way to maintain the integrity of the structure is to fill these fissures with high-quality filler in the form of other people's competencies. The hiring process in an elite business environment resembles not a social contract, but the engineering design of a biomechanical organism. A character striving for dominance is obligated to audit their personality with the cold detachment of a forensic pathologist. If their strength is aggressive marketing and sales, they must admit total helplessness in matters of logistics, accounting, or compliance. This is not an admission of weakness, but a calculation of efficiency. Retaining control over processes in which a natural gift is absent leads to an unjustified waste of cognitive resources and an increase in cortisol levels. To maintain focus on the signal, it is necessary to delegate noise to those for whom that noise is the primary form of existence. The price for filling these voids is always expressed in ownership rights. Capital requires a sacrifice in the form of equity participation. Transferring shares to partners is not an act of generosity, but an insurance premium for the survival of the system. The classic symbiosis of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in the early 90s serves as the benchmark for such architecture. One possessed the vision and the ability to dictate will to the market. The other was a genius of engineering thought. Separately, their potential was limited. Together, they created a closed cycle of producing surplus that was impossible to destroy from the outside. They understood that success was possible only on the condition that each of them recognized their fundamental inability to replace the other. The critical point of tension in the development of any system occurs when a financial threshold of 5 million units is reached. This is not just a number, it is a biological scaling barrier. Up to this mark, a business can exist on the energy and charisma of one person. But beyond it, a zone of structural deformation begins. This is where all the hidden cracks in the organization's foundation manifest. If the creator is unable to make the transition from the role of a lone entrepreneur to the role of a systemic leader, they become the main obstacle to their own creation. At this moment, the creator severance protocol comes into effect. In harsh venture structures, there is a practice known as taking them out to the woodshed. When a company founder, despite holding a significant block of shares, stops meeting the system's requirements and cannot provide the leverage for further growth, they are removed from operational management. They remain a shareholder. Their financial interest is protected, but their right to leadership is annulled. This is a cold, emotionless act of system calibration. Capital does not tolerate sentimentality. If the biological carrier of an idea cannot adapt to a scale of 50 or 500 million, the system replaces them with a more efficient element. The transition to the status of a leader requires a complete restructuring of neural connections, from manic control over details to managing the energy and talents of those who are stronger than you in their narrow niches. Those who do not undergo this transformation become victims of their own limitations, leaving their empire to the care of those who know how to listen to the rhythm of large mechanisms. The hierarchical structure of a classic corporation is a stage set, created to soothe shareholders and maintain the illusion of order. In reality, capital recognizes only one force: the ability to capture territory. In this coordinate system, the figure of the CEO often turns out to be overrated. An administrator managing processes is a replaceable module. Meanwhile, the true architects of expansion, those on the front lines of sales, possess the status of invulnerability. A salesperson who knows their distribution channel and feels the nerve of the buyer represents far greater value to the system than any top manager with a degree from a prestigious university. Without sales, any innovative product turns into a pile of useless parts, devoid of life force. The first step toward creating an empire begins with the destruction of sentimental ties. There is a destructive habit among beginning entrepreneurs to seek validation of their correctness from their close circle. Selling a product to an aunt or a brother is not a business, but a form of social parasitism. Relatives buy out of pity or a desire to support, which distorts market feedback and creates a false sense of security. The true test of a system's viability occurs at arm's length when a product is purchased by an absolute stranger. This act of transaction is devoid of emotion. The buyer pays for only one thing: relief from pain. If a product or service reduces the level of discomfort in a specific point of their life, they are ready to part with their capital. The ability to repeat this process 100,000 times is the foundation on which a $500 million building is erected. Growth progression follows a strict mathematical logic, where each new level requires a manifold increase in pressure. If a system can generate 100,000 in profit, it is capable of 500,000. The transition from 500,000 to 5 million is a test of endurance and the assembly quality of the team. But it is at the 5 million mark that a qualitative mutation occurs. Until that point, a character could be a successful craftsman, controlling every screw of their mechanism. But for the jump to 50 million and beyond to 500 million, a transformation into a predatory strategist is required. One capable of delegating operational noise management to concentrate on global market capture. Those who get stuck in micromanagement are doomed to stagnation. Their fate is to remain forever in the valley of death, where ambitions no longer match resources. To assess the true state of a business organism, an experienced investor ignores official reports and the glossy presentations of management. They are interested in only two nodes of the system: social capital and the mechanism of audience capture. Instead of talking to the CEO in sterile meeting rooms, the choice falls on those who truly have their finger on the pulse: the head of sales and the social media manager. These people are the carriers of the company's genetic code. They know the real cost of customer acquisition and the return on advertising investment, the very indicators that determine whether a business is a flourishing oasis or a beautifully decorated mirage, surviving its final days on borrowed funds. The procedure for extracting the truth requires a specific atmosphere, devoid of corporate officialdom. The ritual involves separate meetings in expensive restaurants, where over bottles of exceptional wine, under the mask of social conversation, the real numbers are dissected. In a state of relaxation, under the influence of alcohol and the absence of oversight, hierarchical barriers collapse. It is here, in the shadow of wine cellars, that critical failures in logistics, distributor dissatisfaction, or the inefficiency of advertising campaigns are revealed. One evening spent with the head of sales provides more information about the company's future than months of audits. Wine loosens tongues, and the truth about the cost of customer acquisition delivers the final verdict on the viability of the entire structure. The fundamental difference between the capital elite and the rank-and-file employee lies not in the volume of available resources, but in the architecture of the psyche. Most people seek emotional balance, trying to avoid stress and stay within their comfort zone. For a capital management system, such a desire is fatal. Entrepreneurship in its highest form is not a straight line to success, but a continuous cycle of collisions where the subject gets hit in the face time and time again. These blows are not a sign of failure. They serve as the only reliable navigation tool, teaching the system the art of the pivot, a sharp change in direction when encountering an insurmountable obstacle. The ability to withstand extreme pressure is determined by the quality of the emotional thermostat, the skill to maintain icy calm at moments when reality is tearing apart. The life of a major player is devoid of smooth transitions. It consists of sharp, painful contrasts occurring within a single day. This is a state where, within 30 minutes, the consciousness must process two polar news items: a message about the total collapse of one division, entailing a loss of 10 million, and news of a successful IPO of another asset, bringing a 450-fold profit. An ordinary person would be crushed by this pressure drop, but for a capital professional, it is merely a statistical error, the yin and yang of the daily routine. In this coordinate system, pain is the most effective teacher. Every defeat, every fall, and every bloodied face is data on which paths are closed. A successful strategy never coincides with the original business plan. It crystallizes in the process of a painful search for the path of least resistance, based on the experience of what did not work. Anyone trying to avoid pain deprives themselves of the opportunity to calibrate their system. True progress is possible only in conditions of creative chaos, where at least a third of all marketing and strategic efforts are directed toward experiments that carry a known risk of failure. Maintaining focus on the signal requires the total atrophy of the fear of criticism. A successful manager functions as an isolated circuit. They are deaf to public opinion, accusations of cruelty, or a lack of empathy. The internal mindset of Jerry Patterson, the mentor who formed this type of thinking, states that noise and criticism are inevitable when achieving goals. The ability to slam the door on external noise and concentrate on the three paranoiacally important tasks of the day is the only way to survive in an emotional centrifuge. Ultimately, managing an empire is managing one's own perception of catastrophe. One who has learned to meet a loss of 10 million with the same cold interest as an unexpected profit becomes invulnerable to market fluctuations. The emotional thermostat is set to one goal: maintaining the mind's functionality at the epicenter of the storm. In this game, it is not the smartest or even the richest who survives, but the one capable of continuing to move when their world is crumbling before their eyes, knowing that in half an hour, the scenery will inevitably change. Observation of capital movements over decades reveals an anomaly that traditional patriarchal management ignores. Analysis of early investment portfolios across 11 economic sectors shows that the most resilient and profitable structures, 5 to 7 years after launch, are headed by women. This is not a result of a social agenda, but the result of the superiority of specific biological and cognitive management algorithms. The female management protocol is based on two fundamental pillars: realism in goal setting and radical control over incoming information. While the male leadership style often leans toward aggressive expansion with inflated expectations, setting the growth bar at 30%, female management operates with achievable figures. Setting goals at 15 to 16%, allows female teams to achieve stated indicators in 90% of cases, while male collectives manage this only 65% of the time. This forecasting accuracy creates a sticky team effect within the system. The lack of an achievement deficit minimizes staff turnover among key specialists in finance and marketing. The stability of the organization's core proves to be more important than explosive but chaotic growth. The second critical element of this protocol is the reversal of communication. The traditional model of a leader implies dominance in dialogue, where the character transmits their will 2/3 of the time, leaving only 1/3 for listening. The female strategy flips this ratio, turning silence into a tool for extracting profit. The one who speaks spends energy and reveals their cards. The one who listens accumulates data and identifies the opponent's vulnerabilities. Moving to a 1/3 speech, 2/3 listening model radically increases management and investment efficiency. The highest form of applying this protocol is the use of uncomfortable silence in crisis situations. In courtrooms or at the negotiating table for a settlement, silence becomes a weapon. In conditions of prolonged litigation, when parties are exhausted by the process, a 90-second pause can decide the outcome of a multi-million-dollar deal. The human psyche is programmed to fill a void. In moments of acute tension, an opponent, unable to withstand the pressure of silence, inevitably makes a verbal mistake. Just one careless sentence is enough for the true price of the issue to become obvious, and the negotiations to end in the opposite side's capitulation. Mastery of listening allows a leader to notice details that drown in the noise of their own speech. This is a transition from the role of an inspiring orator to the role of a predator analyzer, who enters the game only when the information picture is fully assembled. In a world where everyone strives to make themselves heard, silence becomes the most expensive and rare asset, providing a strategic advantage. The final stage of capital evolution lies in the realization that money itself is merely an intermediate link between slavery and absolute autonomy. In the mass consciousness, wealth is associated with unrestrained consumption. But for a systemic player, it is a form of life insurance. The true goal is not accumulation for accumulation's sake, but the creation of an untouchable reserve that makes the individual invulnerable to any market or social upheavals. 5 million is not just a number. It is the demarcation line beyond which freedom from the need to please the system begins. The mechanics of preserving capital require even more discipline than its creation. The main trap at this stage is investing funds in non-yielding assets, such as luxury items or collectibles, which only have the potential for future capitalization. The system requires balance. The diversification protocol, inherited from conservative financial dynasties, dictates strict limits. No more than 5% of total wealth in a single stock, and no more than 20% in a single economic sector. This prevents a fatal concentration of risk, especially in volatile areas like technology. Even the real estate market, traditionally considered a safe haven, is viewed as a risk zone due to high maintenance costs, which can consume up to 1/3 of net wealth. The foundation of security is short-term treasury bills, T-bills. These are the fuck you money accounts that are not touched under any circumstances. As long as 5 million rests in sovereign debt of the highest reliability category, the character remains the master of their fate, even if all their risky business projects turn to ash. Alternative assets such as gold, Bitcoin, or unique watches are permitted only as a supplement to the portfolio, but never as its core. The singularity of capital occurs at the moment of a major exit. When a company is sold for $450 million, the final separation of the personality from financial results takes place. The paradox is that the morning after gaining fabulous wealth is no different from the morning of the day before. The professional returns to work because their driver is not a thirst for gain, but the thrill of victory and a passion for solving problems. Liquidity provides security, but does not change the architecture of thinking. The system continues to function, cutting off noise and generating signal. No, now, it does so from a state of absolute invulnerability. 5 million in T-bills is the point of no return, beyond which capital ceases to be the master and becomes the loyal watchdog of its creator.